It was a typical Thursday morning in Lagos. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling streets. I sat on our worn-out couch in the living room, watching the flickering images on the TV, trying to numb the constant pain that lived inside me. My husband, Chitty, was in the kitchen, banging pots around, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. But this wasn't a normal Thursday. Not by any means. I could hear him muttering under his breath, something about how I never took care of the house properly, how I didn't show him the respect he deserved. His words had always cut deep, but today, they felt like they were stabbing me in the chest. "Chitty, I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice shaking but firm. I had to address this. It had been too long. He turned around, his face a mask of irritation. His tall frame, dressed in the cheap t-shirt and worn shorts he often wore around the house, gave him an air of indifference. The same indifference he always showed me. "Talk about what, Ada? Don't start this again," he snapped, his voice sharp, as if I was the problem. I stood up, heart racing. I had known for weeks. I had seen the signs, the late-night calls, the way his phone was glued to him, the strange smell of perfume on his shirt when he came home late. And today, I had finally gotten my hands on the proof. The text message. I held up the phone, my fingers trembling. The text was from a number I didn't recognize, but the words were clear. "I miss you, Chitty. I can't wait for you to come to my place tonight." His eyes widened when he saw the screen. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt flash across his face. But it was gone in a second, replaced by anger. "This is none of your business, Ada," he growled, his tone cold and dismissive. "You've never understood me, never been good enough for me." My heart sank. How had it come to this? How had we gone from being a couple bound by love and trust to this? A man who I had given everything to, a man who I had trusted with my life, was cheating on me. And not just with anyone, but with someone who obviously meant more to him than I ever had. "Who is she, Chitty?" I asked, barely able to keep the tears at bay. "Who is she that makes you forget me? Forget the vows we made?" For a moment he didn't answer. Then he laughed. It wasn't a genuine laugh. It was cruel. It was the laugh of a man who no longer cared. "You're pathetic, Ada. You've always been pathetic," he spat, walking toward me with slow, deliberate steps. "You think you're the only one who can make me happy? You think I don't deserve more than this?" His words hit me harder than any slap. The way he looked at me, like I was nothing, like I had never mattered. I had given him everything, and yet I wasn't enough. But that wasn't the end of it. The real shock came when he suddenly lunged at me, grabbing my wrist with an iron grip. "You better keep your mouth shut, Ada," he warned, his breath hot against my face. "If you say one word about this to anyone, I will make your life a living hell." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, his fingers digging into my skin. I could feel my wrist throbbing under his touch. Tears of frustration blurred my vision as I looked up at him. This wasn't the man I married. This was someone else entirely, and I was trapped in a nightmare. He shoved me back, causing me to stumble, and I crashed into the side table. The glass lamp on top teetered and fell, shattering on the floor. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that in that moment, in the middle of all the pain and betrayal, I realized that I was completely and utterly alone. The man I had spent years building a life with had turned into a stranger. One who didn't care about me, didn't care about our family, and certainly didn't care about the vows we had made. But just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Chitty stepped away, muttering something about how I needed to get it together and stop acting crazy. I was left standing there, trembling, unsure of what to do next. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced. I could still feel the weight of his words, the sharpness of his anger. I had spent so many years trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother to our 2 children. But it was never enough for him. He wanted more, and I was never going to be able to give it to him. But then, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, the unexpected happened. Chitty was gone. I woke up to find the bed beside me empty. At first, I thought it was just an early start to his day, but as the minutes turned into hours, I began to panic. Where was he? Why wasn't he at home? The house felt cold, too quiet. My heart raced as I searched every room, every corner of the house. Even though I knew deep down, something wasn't right. And then I saw it. His phone, lying on the living room couch. The screen was cracked. A single message left on the screen. "I'm done. Don't try to find me." That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. My chest tightened. I tried calling him over and over, but the calls went straight to voicemail. He had vanished. And that's when my nightmare truly began. The nightmare that I never could have imagined. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The hours dragged on, but there was still no sign of Chitty. It was as if he had simply disappeared into thin air, leaving me in a state of complete shock. His phone was still lying on the couch, the cracked screen glowing faintly in the dim light of the living room. I sat on the couch, staring at the phone, trying to make sense of what had happened. The message he left was so cold, so final. "I'm done. Don't try to find me." Couldn't breathe. Was this a joke? A cruel game he was playing? But his sudden disappearance felt too real. He had never acted like this before. He always came back no matter how bad things got. But not this time. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was past midnight now, and the house was eerily quiet. I hadn't heard from Chitty in hours, and I felt my heart sinking deeper with every passing minute. The thought of calling his family crossed my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. They had always sided with him, no matter what. I knew they would never understand. They'd probably just tell me I was overreacting, that I should let it go. But I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. I picked up his phone and unlocked it, hoping to find some kind of clue, some explanation. But all I found was more of the same, messages to that woman. The same one whose name kept popping up on his phone. "I miss you, Chitty. Come see me tonight. I'm waiting." Each message was like a slap in the face. The woman seemed to know him better than I did. It was clear they had something more than just a fling. This was serious. Couldn't let this go. Not after everything I had been through. I had given him my best years, my love, my heart. And this was how he repaid me? By betraying me with someone else? I grabbed my purse, my mind made up. I was going to find him. I had no idea where to start, but I had to try. I slipped on my shoes and made my way to the door. The air outside was cool and crisp, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement. Lagos was alive with its usual hum of activity, but it felt like a different world tonight. I was in a state of panic, my mind racing, wondering where Chitty could have gone, why he would do this to me, to our family. I stopped at a street corner, feeling the weight of the night pressing in on me. The fear of what I might find, the anger at what he had done. It was all too much to bear. But just as I was about to cross the street, I noticed something strange. A black car was parked a few meters away, the engine running quietly. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. Then it hit me. The car was Chitty's. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. What was he doing here? I walked closer, trying to keep my steps quiet, my breathing shallow. I peered through the window, half expecting to see him inside. But the car was empty, and that's when I saw it. A piece of paper, folded neatly on the passenger seat. I reached inside the car, feeling the cold leather beneath my fingers as I grabbed the note. I unfolded it slowly, my hands trembling. "I need space. Don't try to contact me again. I'm with her now, and I'm never coming back." The words cut through me like a blade. This wasn't just about a fight. This was him choosing her over me. This was him telling me in the most final way possible that I didn't matter anymore. I felt the tears welling up, but I couldn't cry. Not now. Not when I was so close to the truth. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the note clutched tightly in my hand. This was real. Chitty had left me, and there was no going back. I turned and walked away, the weight of the night pressing down on me with every step. I had to go home, face the emptiness of our house, and figure out what to do next. But deep down, I knew that this was the beginning of something much bigger, something darker, something I couldn't escape. The next few days passed in a blur, each one more painful than the last. Chitty's disappearance had left a hole in my heart that I couldn't fill, no matter how hard I tried. Every time I walked into the house, I half expected him to be there, sitting on the couch with that smug grin of his. But the house was empty, quiet, still. I had tried everything. I called his family. I called his friends. I even tried reaching out to the woman I'd seen in his messages. But no one seemed to know anything. It was like Chitty had vanished off the face of the earth. But the silence was deafening. The absence of his voice, the absence of his presence, gnawed at me like an open wound. I was angry, so angry. How could he just leave me like this? How could he choose her after everything we had been through? I replayed every moment of our marriage in my mind, looking for the signs I had missed, looking for the moment when everything had gone wrong. But it wasn't until I saw the woman's name again, Gozi, that it all started to make sense. Gozi, the woman he had been texting, the one he had been seeing behind my back. Couldn't let it go. I had to know everything. I had to find out where he was, where they were. I had to find her. The next day, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for him to come back. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. He owed me an explanation, and I was going to get it. I started my search, starting with the last known place I had seen Chitty, his office. I knew he spent a lot of time there, especially in the last few weeks, but he had always been secretive about his work. He would never tell me who he was meeting with, where he was going. As I walked through the crowded streets of Lagos, the sun beating down on my back, I felt a deep sense of unease. I was nervous about what I might find. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This was my life, my marriage. I deserved answers. I arrived at his office building, a sleek, modern structure that towered above the other buildings in the area. I was shaking as I walked through the entrance, but I held my head high, determined. The receptionist at the front desk looked up as I approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice soft, almost sympathetic. "I need to speak with Chitty. Is he here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The receptionist hesitated. "He hasn't been in for the last few days. He told us he was taking some personal time off." I felt my heart sink. "Do you know where he is?" She shook her head. "Sorry, ma'am. I don't have that information." I stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between us. I knew she was hiding something, but there was nothing I could do to make her tell me. I turned away, feeling defeated, but then something caught my eye. A familiar face in the hallway in Gozi. She was walking out of one of the offices, her high heels clicking against the floor. My breath caught in my throat. She looked just as I imagined, tall, slender, with a sleek bob haircut and a confident stride. She was dressed in a smart black dress, her bright red lipstick standing out against her smooth complexion. She was the type of woman Chitty would go for, confident, sharp, and obviously well put together. But she didn't see me. She was too busy on her phone, her head down as she walked past me. I had found her. I couldn't let this moment slip away. I needed to talk to her. I needed to know if she was the one who had stolen my husband from me. I took a deep breath and followed her, my heart pounding in my chest. She turned a corner, and I quickened my pace to catch up. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice loud and firm. She stopped in her tracks, looking over her shoulder with a mix of surprise and irritation. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cold. I felt a surge of anger rise within me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I need to talk to you. Now. She raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. I don't know who you think you are, but I'm Chitty's wife, I interrupted, my voice trembling with emotion. I know everything. I know about you and him. The look on her face changed instantly. She glanced around, her eyes darting nervously. This is not a conversation we need to have right now, she said, taking a step back. No, I said, my voice steady now. We are having this conversation right here, right now. She hesitated for a moment, then looked around once more before lowering her voice. Okay, fine, but let's not do this here. I'm not interested in getting involved in your drama. If you want to talk, then we'll talk, but on my terms. I clenched my fists, my anger rising again, but I nodded. Where? She gave me an address, but it wasn't in Lagos. It was on the outskirts, a small cafe on the edge of town. A place where she thought no one would find her. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The air felt thick as I made my way to the cafe Gozi had mentioned. I had no idea what I was about to walk into. Every step felt heavy, my heart pounding louder with each passing second. The further I walked from the familiar streets of Lagos, the more I felt like I was entering a world I wasn't prepared for. The cafe was small, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, a far cry from the bustling chaos of our urban life. It had an old charm to it, wooden tables, mismatched chairs, and soft lighting, the perfect place to meet in secret. As I pushed open the door, the bell above it jingled softly, and the smell of fresh coffee and pastries hit my nose. It was calm, peaceful even, but my nerves were anything but. I scanned the room quickly and saw her, Gozi, sitting by the window, sipping her coffee, her eyes scanning her phone. She didn't look up as I approached, her focus unwavering. I stood there for a moment, taking in the sight of her. She was even more beautiful up close, but the venom that surged through my veins made her beauty irrelevant. The woman who had stolen my husband, the woman who had torn apart my family. She didn't even acknowledge me until I was standing right in front of her. Are you going to stand there all day, or are you going to sit? She said without looking up, her voice dripping with arrogance. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, my anger simmering beneath the surface. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I wasn't going to let her speak to me like I was nothing. I don't need to sit, Gozi, I said, my voice icy. I need answers. That caught her attention. She finally looked up, her face now registering something. Fear. Maybe? Couldn't be sure. Answers to what? She asked, trying to sound calm, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady but firm. How long has this been going on? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw something close to guilt flash across her face. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by a look of defiance. You don't understand, she began, her voice low, almost like she was trying to calm me down. Chitty and I. No. I cut her off, my voice rising. I don't need to hear your excuses. You knew he was married. You knew about me, about our family, and you still decided to go behind my back. You decided to steal my husband from me. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding my gaze for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone was softer, almost regretful. It wasn't like that, she said quietly. Chitty and I, we have something. We have something real. Something real. The words echoed in my mind, and the sting of betrayal hit me again, sharper this time. You think this is real? I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. You think what you have is real? You've destroyed everything. My home, my family, and for what? A few stolen moments of happiness. She looked at me then, her expression more serious. You don't get it, Ada. Chitty isn't happy with you. He hasn't been for a long time. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had suspected it, felt it in my bones, but hearing her say it out loud made it all the more painful. I shook my head, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions inside me. You think that gives you the right to come into my life, into my marriage, and tear it apart? You don't know anything about what we've been through, what we've built. I could see the conflict in her eyes now, the crack in her confident facade. But she quickly masked it with a shrug. You should have known, Ada. You should have paid attention. He wasn't happy with you anymore. I gave him something you couldn't. Her words were cutting, but they were also a reality I hadn't wanted to face. I felt a pang of shame, of self-doubt. Had I really been that blind? Had I missed the signs all along? But I wasn't here to blame myself. I was here to take control. So what now? I asked, my voice cold as ice. What happens when Chitty realizes that he's made a mistake? What happens when he comes back to me? She sighed, as if she was tired of the conversation. He won't come back, Ada. He's made his choice. For a long moment, there was silence between us. The world outside the cafe felt distant, like it didn't matter anymore. All that mattered now was what had been shattered. My marriage, my family, my trust. Is that what you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. For me to walk away and let you have him? She didn't answer at first. Instead, she took another sip of her coffee, clearly trying to avoid the question. But I wasn't going to let her off that easily. I'm not going to let him go without a fight, I said firmly. I'll make sure he knows the truth. I'll make sure the world knows the truth about you and him. I'll make sure he pays for what he's done to me. Her face hardened, her eyes flashing with something dark. You can't force him to love you, Ada. He doesn't want you anymore. I don't need him to love me, Gozi, I said, my voice low and dangerous now. But I will make sure he regrets this. I will make sure that his life is never the same again. She scoffed, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. She didn't know what I was capable of. She didn't know the lengths I would go to, but she would. I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play. Ngozi's calm demeanor, her confidence, it all felt like a mask. Beneath it, I could sense that she knew something she wasn't telling me. It wasn't just about Chitty and me anymore. There was something darker, something deeper in the way she spoke, the way she refused to look me in the eye when I asked certain questions. I couldn't leave it at that. I had to dig deeper. I had to get to the truth. The next day, after our confrontation at the cafe, I couldn't stop thinking about Ngozi's words. Chitty won't come back. He's made his choice. It haunted me, gnawed at me, like an open wound that wouldn't heal. Was she right? Had Chitty truly chosen her over me? And if so, why did I feel like there was more to it? I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to go straight to the source. I decided to visit Chitty's family. I hadn't spoken to them in a while, not since our last family gathering, when the tension between us had reached a breaking point. Chitty's family, like his friends, had always been blind to his flaws. They admired him, respected him. They would never see him for what he had become. But maybe, just maybe, they knew something I didn't. I arrived at his mother's house just after lunch. The familiar scent of cooking wafted from the kitchen, but it did little to comfort me. The house was large and well-kept, like a fortress of old memories and family pride. When Chitty's mother opened the door, I could see the surprise in her eyes, but it quickly turned to something else. Concern, maybe even guilt. "Ada, what brings you here?" she asked, her voice soft, like she was afraid of what I might say. "I need to talk to you," I said, stepping inside. "I need to know the truth." She looked at me with a mix of hesitation and worry. "What truth, Ada?" I took a deep breath. "About Chitty, about everything that's been going on. I need to know if you knew about him and Gozi." Her face tightened at the mention of Ngozi's name, and for a moment, she said nothing. But I could see it, the flicker of something in her eyes. She knew more than she was letting on. I didn't know about them, she said, finally breaking the silence. But Ada, you need to understand, Chitty hasn't been the same for a while. He's been different, withdrawn. Withdrawn, I repeated, feeling the anger rising in me. That's all you have to say? He's been cheating on me with that woman, and you think it's just a phase? She flinched at the sharpness in my voice. I never condoned what he did, but sometimes a man needs something more, something you couldn't give him. I was taken aback by her words. Was she really defending him? Was she really implying that I wasn't enough for her son? No, it's not like that, I said, my voice breaking. He's been lying to me, using me, for years, and now he's chosen her over me. You have to see that. I know, Ada, she said, lowering her gaze. But Chitty has always been difficult. He has always been hard to satisfy. You were the one who made him happy at first. But what? I demanded, stepping closer. But what? You think he's justified in doing this to me? You think I deserve this? She stayed silent for a long time, and I could feel the frustration building inside me. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer now, like she was speaking to a child. You don't understand, Ada. Chitty has always had a dark side. He's always had a side of him that he kept hidden. And it's not something he can control. It's something he's always struggled with. I was stunned. A dark side? Chitty? What are you talking about? I asked, my voice trembling with confusion. What side? Why didn't you tell me? She looked up at me then, her face filled with sorrow. Because I couldn't. Because no one would believe me. Chitty, he has a temper. A bad one. And when he's angry, when he's upset, he doesn't think. He does things he regrets. I've seen him do it before, Ada. I've seen him hurt people, hurt you. My mind reeled. What was she saying? Chitty had always been hot-headed, but he had never been violent. Had he been hiding something from me? Was I blind to the things that were right in front of me? She continued, her voice trembling now. I thought it was just a phase when you two first got married. But when you had the children, when he started working more, I saw it again. That rage. That need to control everything. And when he started looking outside your marriage, I knew it was because he felt trapped. But that doesn't make it right. I felt the room spin. I had always known Chitty had a temper, but I never imagined it was this bad. Never imagined he was capable of the kind of anger his mother was describing. And to think I had blamed myself for everything that had gone wrong in our marriage. So you knew? I asked, barely able to get the words out. You knew what he was doing to me? And you didn't warn me? I never wanted to see him hurt you, she whispered. But sometimes, Ada, a mother has to step back. Sometimes you can't save them from themselves. I stared at her, my mind reeling. Chitty had always been the man I loved, the man I had built my life around. But now I wasn't so sure. Was he truly capable of hurting me like this? Was he capable of doing even worse? I couldn't stay in that house any longer. I needed to leave. I needed to think. But one thing was clear now. Chitty was hiding something from me. And no matter how much I loved him, no matter how much I wanted to believe in him, I had to find out what it was. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. I left Chitty's mother's house feeling like the world was crumbling beneath me. The weight of everything she had said lingered in my mind, like a dark cloud that wouldn't go away. I had always thought I knew my husband. I thought I understood his flaws, his insecurities. But now I wasn't so sure. Had I truly been blind to the signs all along? Or had he been hiding parts of himself from me? That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, the emptiness of Chitty's absence too overwhelming. I kept thinking back to the conversation I had with his mother, the things she had said about his temper, the rage he kept bottled up inside. It wasn't just an emotional affair. It was so much worse. And what about Gozi? Was she the only one? Was there more to this story than I had yet discovered? I couldn't stop the questions from flooding my mind. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't just sit here and let him get away with everything. I decided to take a different approach. I couldn't confront him head-on without knowing the full truth. I had to dig deeper. I needed more than just words. I needed proof. I started by reaching out to the people closest to Chitty, his friends, the ones who had known him for years. I called his best friend, Kofi, who had always been there for Chitty, through thick and thin. Kofi was more than just a friend. He was family. He had been at our wedding, had seen us through the ups and downs of marriage. When I called him, his voice was calm, but there was something in it. A hesitation, a reluctance to speak freely. "Ada, what's going on? You sound off." "I need to know the truth, Kofi," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "I need to know what's been going on with Chitty. You know him better than anyone. Please, tell me what's really going on." There was a long pause before Kofi finally spoke. "Ada, I wish I could tell you everything, but you have to understand, Chitty is a complicated guy. He's always been that way. He's not the same person you married." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Not the same person you married. Had Chitty changed so much that I couldn't even recognize him anymore? "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Kofi hesitated again, then sighed. "Chitty's been struggling for a long time. I don't know if you've noticed, but he's always been battling with his demons. His anger, his need for control. It's been eating away at him. And when things started falling apart with you, when he felt like you weren't enough anymore, he went looking for something to fill that emptiness." I felt my stomach churn. "So, you knew about Gozi?" "I knew something was going on, but I didn't know the full extent," Kofi admitted. "Chitty's been distant, and I've tried to talk to him to make him see what he was doing, but it's like talking to a wall. He doesn't listen. He's caught up in his own world now." "But why didn't you tell me, Kofi?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "I had to find out from his mother." "I didn't know how to tell you, Ada," Kofi replied softly. "I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't want to hurt you even more. But now it's clear you need to know. You deserve to know the truth." The truth. It was a bitter pill to swallow. "So what should I do now?" I asked, feeling lost. "How do I fix this? How do I save my marriage when it feels like everything is falling apart?" "You need to talk to him, Ada," Kofi said, his voice firm now. "But not just about Gozi or his cheating. You need to talk about everything. The anger, the control, the lies. You need to make him face himself. If he's going to change, he has to want to. And right now, I don't think he's ready to." I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. Could Chitty change? Could he really become the man I once loved again? Or had I been fooling myself all along? "Thanks, Kofi," I finally said, my voice barely audible. "I need to think." I hung up the phone and sat there in the dark, the reality of everything crashing down on me. The man I thought I knew, the man I had loved, had become someone else entirely. A man who could lie, cheat, and manipulate without a second thought. But I wasn't going to give up. Not yet. I was going to confront him. I was going to make him face the truth, no matter how painful it was. And if he couldn't face it, then I would have to let go. I had to protect myself, my family, and my peace. The next morning, I woke up determined. My thoughts were clearer now, sharper, more focused. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of what Chitty had done. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. He needed to be confronted, and I needed to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. I called Chitty's phone again. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. My heart dropped. Why wasn't he answering? Was he avoiding me on purpose? I called again. No answer. I left a message, my voice steady but firm. "Chitty, we need to talk. Now, I don't care where you are. I don't care what you're doing. I need answers. You owe me that. I didn't know if he would call back. I didn't know if he would show up. But I wasn't going to wait anymore. Couldn't. I dressed quickly, pulling on a simple dress and my sneakers, preparing for the emotional storm that was about to hit. I couldn't sit in that empty house, waiting for him to decide when he was ready to face me. I was done waiting. I decided to head to his office, hoping I might catch him there. The thought of confronting him in front of his colleagues made my stomach turn, but I couldn't wait any longer. I had to get the answers I deserved. As I walked through the familiar streets of Lagos, the sun blinding in the sky, my thoughts were all over the place. Should I even be doing this? What if he turned it all around on me, made me the villain in this twisted mess? Could I really trust my own instincts anymore? But no, I wasn't going to back down. I arrived at the office building, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. I was angry, I was hurt, but most of all I was tired. Tired of playing this game. Tired of pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I walked through the entrance, my eyes scanning the reception area for any sign of Chitty. The receptionist looked up at me, her expression neutral. "Good morning, Ada. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for Chitty," I said, my voice low, trying to control the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. "Is he here?" The receptionist hesitated for a moment, glancing at the clock on the wall. "He left for a meeting about an hour ago, ma'am. He should be back soon, though." I felt my chest tighten. I had to wait. I couldn't leave now. I couldn't back down. I sat down in the waiting area, trying to steady my breathing. I couldn't stop my mind from racing. What was I going to say to him? How could I make him understand the depth of the pain he had caused? Would he even care? As I waited, I thought about the way things used to be. How we used to laugh together. How he used to hold me close and tell me that nothing could come between us. How we built our family, how we grew together. And now it felt like all of that was slipping away, piece by piece, leaving nothing but resentment and betrayal behind. Just as I was about to lose hope, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I looked up, and there he was, Chitty. His tall frame filled the doorway, his usual confident stride making him look completely at ease. But when he saw me, his expression faltered for just a second. "What are you doing here, Ada?" he asked, his tone guarded. "I told you I was busy." "Busy with her, I suppose?" I snapped, unable to hold back the anger any longer. "You've had enough time to be busy with her, Chitty. Now it's time for you to face me." He stepped into the room, his eyes narrowing. "Not here, Ada. Not now." "No, we're doing this now." I shot back, standing up, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around, and I've had enough." Chitty took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand, Ada. It's not what you think." "I think I understand perfectly," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You're a liar, a cheater. You've betrayed me, and I don't know how much more of this I can take." He flinched at the words, but there was no apology in his eyes, only frustration. "Ada, this isn't just about me and Gozi. This is about everything. About what we've been through." "What we've been through?" I echoed. "What about what I have been through, Chitty? What about all the lies you told me? The promises you broke?" He looked away, avoiding my gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you, Ada, but you've been so distant, so cold. I needed someone who understood me, who didn't judge me for everything I did." "Judge you?" I spat, my anger flaring. "I never judged you, Chitty. I loved you. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me." I took a step closer to him, my chest rising and falling with each labored breath. "You think you can just walk away from me, walk away from our family, and I'm supposed to accept it? No, Chitty. This ends now." He remained silent, his jaw clenched. I could see the inner struggle in his eyes, but there was no remorse, no regret, just anger. "This marriage is over," he said finally. his voice cold, like it had been decided long before this moment. "I've made my choice, Ada. And it's not you." The words hit me harder than any slap. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as I tried to process what he was saying. Had it really come to this? Had my husband, the man I gave everything to, really chosen her over me? I stood there in shock, the words swirling in my mind. And in that moment, I realized something. I couldn't change him. I couldn't make him love me the way I needed. This was the end. And somehow, I had to find a way to move on. The silence between us was suffocating. I could barely breathe, my heart heavy with the weight of Chitty's words. "I've made my choice, Ada. And it's not you." It was like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me in a state of numb disbelief. I had expected anger, maybe even tears, but not this. Not his indifference. Not this cold finality. It felt like a cruel punch to my gut. No hesitation, no remorse, just a final declaration of the end. I stared at him, trying to find any trace of the man I had once loved, the man I had trusted. But all I saw was a stranger. His eyes, once full of warmth and affection, were now vacant. He was done, and I was no longer a part of his plans. The tears came then, but they weren't the kind I expected. They weren't the tearful sobs of betrayal, the kind I had been preparing for. No, they were quiet, steady, like a slow, inevitable flood. I wasn't crying for him anymore. I was crying for me, for the woman I had become in this relationship, for the life I thought I had, and for the shattered dream of a happy family that no longer existed. I had given him everything, my love, my trust, my devotion. I had stood by him through thick and thin, believing in the vows we had taken, believing that nothing could tear us apart. And yet, here I was, standing in front of a man who had discarded everything we had built for a woman who meant nothing but pain to me. Chitty didn't say anything else. He just stood there, his face a mask of indifference, his arms crossed as if he had already moved on. I wiped my tears away, taking a deep breath. The time for tears was over. This wasn't about me begging for his affection or trying to fix something that was beyond repair. This was about me, about finding the strength to walk away from the man who had broken me. "You've made your choice, Chitty," I said, my voice steady now, each word clear and deliberate. "And so have I." For the first time, he looked surprised. He uncrossed his arms, his face shifting with a hint of confusion. "What do you mean, Ada?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost uncertain. I took a step back, meeting his gaze with the strength I didn't know I had. "I mean, I'm done. I'm done trying to fix something that's already broken. I'm done fighting for a marriage that doesn't exist anymore." He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. "No, you don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to play the victim to make me feel guilty for wanting something real. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I turned and walked toward the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. But I didn't look back. I couldn't keep looking back at the man I once loved, the man who had chosen someone else. As I stepped out of the office building, the cool evening air hit my face like a rush of reality. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done living in the shadow of Chitty's lies. I was done being his backup, his second choice. I was worth more than that. The pain was still there, deep in my chest, but it was no longer consuming me. It was a part of me, but it didn't define me. I had lost the man I thought was my soulmate, but in that loss, I had found something else, myself. I didn't know how I would move forward, or what the next chapter of my life would look like, but I knew I couldn't keep holding on to something that was never going to be. I had to let go. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece, and I would do it without him. The days after I left Chitty felt like a blur. I moved through them in a haze of disbelief, as if the world around me was happening in slow motion. I went through the motions, waking up, taking care of the kids, keeping my job, but every part of me felt empty. I couldn't escape the ache in my chest, The feeling that everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of, had just crumbled in front of me. But amidst the grief, something began to change. It started with a feeling, a quiet, growing resolve deep inside me. The more I thought about everything that had happened, the more I realized that I wasn't just hurting because of Chitty's betrayal. I was hurting because I had lost myself in the process. I had given so much of who I was to a man who didn't value me, to a relationship that no longer served me. And I didn't want to be that woman anymore. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat in the quiet of the living room, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old photos of Chitty and me, of our wedding, of the moments that seemed so perfect at the time. They all felt like distant memories, like they belonged to someone else. I paused at one photo. It was of me, standing alone, smiling with a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I had back then. It was a picture from before Chitty, from before everything became complicated. The realization hit me like a wave. I was more than just his wife. I was more than just a mother. I was Ada. I was me. And I needed to reclaim who I was. The first step was facing the inevitable. I had to speak to Chitty again, this time not to ask for answers, but to make sure he understood that I was moving on. I wasn't going to let him continue to control the narrative. I wasn't going to let him think that his actions didn't have consequences. I called him, my fingers trembling as I pressed the dial button. I hadn't heard from him in days, and part of me wondered if he even cared enough to pick up. The phone rang, and for a moment I thought about hanging up, but I didn't. I needed this closure. When he finally answered, his voice was flat, almost bored. "Ada," he said, like he was surprised I was calling. "What is it now?" I felt the anger stir inside me again, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me. "I just wanted to make something clear," I said, my voice steady. "You've made your choice, Chitty. You've moved on, and so have I. But you need to know that I'm not going to let you manipulate me anymore. I won't let you use me as a backup or as a safety net when things with her don't work out." There was a pause on the other end, and for a moment I thought he might say something to try and explain himself, but he didn't. Instead, there was only silence. "I don't need your apology," I continued, each word cutting through the air. "I don't need your explanations. I just need you to understand that I am moving forward. Without you." There was a long, heavy pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost resigned. "I never meant for it to end this way, Ada. I never wanted to hurt you." The words felt hollow, like they were more for his own peace of mind than for mine. But it didn't matter. I wasn't holding on to the hope that he would change, that he would come back. I had to accept that this was the end. "I know, Chitty. I know," I said softly. "But it's over now." I hung up the phone, the weight of the moment settling over me. There was no magic solution to the pain, no easy way out. But I had taken control. I had reclaimed my peace, my dignity. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet strength, a resilience I hadn't known I had. The next few weeks weren't easy. There were days when the loneliness threatened to swallow me whole, when I missed the life I had imagined for myself and my children. But slowly, bit by bit, I started to rebuild. I focused on my work, on my children, and on finding joy in the small things. I started going to the gym, reading books I hadn't touched in years, and reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with. Most importantly, I started to love myself again, to forgive myself for letting things go on as long as they did, for not speaking up sooner, for not seeing the signs. But I also forgave myself for caring, for loving Chitty with all my heart, even when he didn't deserve it. One day, as I sat on the balcony, watching the sunset with my children beside me, I realized something. I didn't need Chitty to complete me. I didn't need anyone to define who I was or what I was capable of. I was enough. I always had been. And from that moment on, I promised myself that no matter what happened, I would never forget that again. The months after Chitty left were the hardest I had ever faced, but also some of the most transformative. It was as though I had been walking in a fog for so long, just going through the motions, waiting for someone to pull me out. But in the silence, in the space that was left by his absence, I began to find myself again. I started to see the woman I had always been but had forgotten for so long. The pain of betrayal still lingered, of course. There were days when I woke up and the weight of the past felt like a heavy blanket suffocating me. But more often than not, I felt a sense of liberation, like the chains had finally been broken. I didn't need to be defined by my marriage anymore, by the failures or the regrets. I was Ada. I was strong. And I was more than enough. Chitty and I never spoke again after that final conversation. He tried to reach out a few times, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices, and now I was making mine. I wasn't going to let him come back and rewrite the story. I had taken back my narrative, and I wasn't going to let him take that from me again. The kids adjusted to the changes, too. They missed their father, of course, but they also thrived in the new environment. We were no longer walking on eggshells, no longer pretending that everything was fine. They saw their mother happy again, and that made all the difference. We started spending more time together, just the three of us. Watching movies, cooking meals, going to the park. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. It was real. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, laughing over something silly one of the kids had said, I realized that I hadn't smiled like this in a long time. The laughter filled the room, bright and warm, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. True peace. The kind that comes from knowing that no matter what the future held, I could face it on my own. I was enough. I had grown stronger in the face of the betrayal, in the face of the lies. I had faced my deepest fears and come out the other side, not broken, but whole. I had learned to stand on my own, to walk through the storm with my head held high. And the best part? I had learned to love myself again. As the weeks turned into months, I started to think about the future. Not just in terms of my children, but of myself. What did I want out of life now? What did I want to accomplish? I had dreams I had set aside for so long, dreams I had forgotten about while I had been busy trying to hold everything together. But now I was ready to reclaim those dreams. I started taking steps toward a future that was all my own. I enrolled in a photography class I had always wanted to take, began working on writing a book about my experiences, and even started making plans to travel. There was a whole world out there waiting for me, and I wasn't going to let fear or guilt hold me back anymore. I was free. And then, one evening, as I sat on the balcony again, looking out at the stars with the kids curled up beside me, I knew that I had made the right decision. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. The betrayal had changed me, yes, but it had also made me stronger. It had forced me to confront the parts of myself I had ignored, to face the truth about who I was and what I was capable of. And now, I could see the future ahead of me, not as a victim of my past, but as a woman who had reclaimed her power. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below.